Well, this is something we weren't expecting first thing in the morning on May 27th, 2020. It's 8:16 a.m. on the US East Coast, and South Carolina has a tropical storm bearing down on it right now, named Bertha. It has been named by the National Hurricane Center in the last few minutes and is about to reach the coast there of the central part of the state and will move inland. A tropical storm warning is in effect, and forgive me because we've just received all of this information, so we're still getting all our threads together. A tropical storm warning is in effect for Edisto Beach to South Santee River in South Carolina. The best I can do for you right now, because we're just setting up here, is show you this imagery. I will be bringing more things to the table very shortly, but in the live chat you can have a discussion amongst yourselves whilst we take a look at this storm. It's got winds of 45 miles per hour, a pressure of 1009 millibars. So, to repeat, Tropical Storm Bertha has formed in the Atlantic Ocean. You're not dreaming this morning. At 17 minutes past 8 on the US East Coast. This is our second tropical storm of the season before it's even begun. You may recall that the Force 13 forecast that we released on April the 11th called for 14 storms this year. Well, that was on an assumption that the first storm, or should I say the second storm, would have formed around about July the 20th. So there's clearly going to be big changes on that when we release our update on May the 31st. Tropical Storm Bertha is approaching the coast of South Carolina right now with winds of 45 miles per hour, that's 75 kilometers per hour, and a central pressure of 1009 millibars. This has been confirmed, I believe, by a weather buoy just off the coast. Let me read out the full advisory for you, since we've got nothing else right now. Just to recap again, that tropical storm warning in effect for Edisto Beach to South Santee River. A tropical storm warning means that tropical storm conditions are expected somewhere within the warning, in this case, in the next few hours. For storm information specific to your area, including possible inland watches and warnings, please monitor products issued by your local National Weather Service Forecast Office. At 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, the center of Tropical Storm Bertha was located near latitude 32.7 north, longitude 79.4 west. Bertha is moving towards the northwest near 9 miles per hour, and this motion is expected to continue through tonight. On the forecast track, the center of Bertha will move onshore in the warning area in the next few hours, and move inland across eastern and northern South Carolina later today and into west central North Carolina by tonight. Maximum sustained winds are near 45 miles per hour with higher gusts. Bertha is expected to weaken to a tropical depression after moving inland and become a remnant low tonight. Tropical storm force winds extend outwards up to 25 miles from the center, and the estimated minimum central pressure is 1009 millibars. I'm going to be here in the background doing a lot of clicking whilst we get all of our graphics up. This has literally just started, this stream at least, and of course this storm. This is brand new. Tropical Storm Bertha has just been named by the National Hurricane Center with 45 mile an hour winds and a pressure of 1009 millibars. I was a bit worried yesterday when they had it only at 30%, which seemed a little low to me. I gave it a half chance in my mind, a 50%, given that models were split really on whether we would get a closed isobar or not, and that's one of the indicators that we'd get a tropical depression. Although that's the most that I thought we would get from this, a tropical depression. Clearly not. This is a tropical storm with 45 mile an hour winds and just getting a latest position estimate for you right now for our graphic, which we'll show you shortly. It is just 50 miles east-southeast of Charleston. So 50 miles east-southeast of Charleston, South Carolina is the current position of this storm right now. It's just me here at the moment, so do bear with me. I'm just filling in all the information so that we can show a little bit more graphics, get a little bit more engagement going on. If you do have any questions, you can send them in. I don't know if we've got any chat mods on there at the moment who could answer any questions. At the moment, I will not be able to look at your messages for a little while yet whilst I sort everything out. But for those who are just joining us, to reiterate, Tropical Storm Bertha has just formed in the Atlantic. It's 8:22 a.m. Eastern Time on this May 27th, and the National Hurricane Center has just named it in the last 10 to 15 minutes. My name's Nathan Foy, and this is something that we certainly weren't expecting to see before hurricane season started, well, most of us at any rate. A second tropical storm, and with all the heat potential out there this year, well, things are stacking up in favour of what would appear to be an above average season. Trying to talk and work at the same time isn't the easiest thing in the world, so again, please bear with me for a little while whilst I get a lot of the things up and running here as we keep watching this storm. I think people are still really just taking it in right now. We wanted to get on the air really as quickly as possible, and we have. And that is why we're not looking at a huge amount what you'd expect to see on a Force 13 stream. To reiterate, Tropical Storm Bertha has formed in the North Atlantic, in the western North Atlantic, just off the coast of South Carolina. Will make landfall later today. Winds currently around 45 miles per hour. There's not too much more I can say at this moment in time as we prepare more graphics. Sound like a broken record already. I can tell you locally there are flood warnings and advisories out in parts of South Carolina. This, if anything, would be a potential flooding event. A flood warning for the Santee River near Jamestown. At 8 p.m. Tuesday, the stage was 15.1 feet already. Flood stage is 10 feet. Minor flooding is occurring. A moderate flooding is forecast for the Santee River near Jamestown. The Wateree River at Lake Wateree affecting Fairfield, Kershaw and Lancaster counties. That's in effect. Also for the Congaree River at Carolina Eastman affecting Calhoun, Lexington and Richland counties. Flood warning has been extended for northeast Cape Fear near Burgaw affecting Pender County, North Carolina, and Little PD at Gallivant's Ferry affecting Horry and Marion counties in South Carolina. Other places here, Black Creek at Quinby affecting Darlington and Florence counties, and Lynches at Effingham affecting Florence County, South Carolina. If you've just joined us once again, and I know I'm repeating myself to those who have tuned in from the start, this is breaking news. Tropical Storm Bertha has formed in the Atlantic Ocean just off the coast of South Carolina first thing this morning. This is very hot off the press. Around 10 minutes ago, the National Hurricane Center declared the formation of Tropical Storm Bertha, which at yesterday they had only a 30% chance of developing. Even early overnight, coming into the early hours of this morning, I think it was still only 30%. And here we are witnessing now a live tropical storm. Picture here from the GOES 16 satellite, and that is up to 12:16 UTC, so that's 10 minutes ago. Unfortunately, I'm worried about changing much on this screen because those who've been with us a while will know that we've got a bit of a new format, and we're still working on it. If only the tropics would give us a chance to perfect it. We're still not there yet, but we're doing the best we can right now, and I just want to try and get a filler image that we can just grab so that I can go off this screen and then do something else for a moment. But again, that's the latest concrete information there. This is Tropical Storm Bertha. It has 45-mile-per-hour winds and is 50 miles east-southeast of Charleston. And we're still working on everything else. This live feed, we don't know how long we'll run this for, but we did just want to break in with this news. It's such short notice for the coast there on what we thought might have just been a you know, a frontal system that wouldn't develop, but you can quite clearly see large amounts of convection there just off the coast and some of it moving onshore. Hopefully we'll be able to get you some radar on that very shortly as I figure out the controls. No, maybe not there. Let's try this. Ah, there is radar imagery along with the storm itself right now. There we go. So this is Bertha as we're seeing it right now. Radar and satellite merged together on the screen, and you can see the center of this storm developed very, very rapidly not long ago and is very quickly moving towards land, I have to say. To be honest with you, as a landfalling event, this could be over within an hour or so, looking at the rate of this movement on radar. So looking at that radar depiction, I would say that just eyeballing it there, moving closer in towards land, it must only be about 26 miles offshore. This image recovers a period of nearly 2 hours. So you can see just how far it's moved in 2 hours, and going off that, I would only say maybe an hour and a half before landfall in South Carolina. To reiterate, that tropical storm warning is in effect for Edisto Beach to South Santee River in South Carolina, and is already delivering significant amounts of rainfall, as you can see. This is Force 13 Live, a very rushed Force 13 Live. We're struggling a little bit because this has just happened. It's just me here at the moment, but at least we can show you a little shiny caption at the top of our screen that we've got Tropical Storm Bertha live, pictures, 45-mile-an-hour winds, and a pressure of 1009 millibars. Wow. Well, if you've got any comments or questions for us, I think we'll just leave it like this on our screen. And let's see if we can, if anyone wants to send in comments and questions, you can start your message with Force 13 all in text. It's very impromptu, so we'll just see where it goes, but we'll continue watching this storm for as long as we can here, and send in your questions. Start your message with Force 13 all in text, and I'll keep repeating a lot of those warnings and whatever else. Someone did ask earlier about 92A, which is a tropical depression, not a tropical depression, a invest that's located in the Arabian Sea. Now, for quite a few days, computer models have been suggesting that a lot of crazy things are going to happen between now and, say, the 5th of June. At one point, the GFS model had no less than 7 tropical cyclones form around the world. I believe 3 of them were in the Atlantic, 2 of them were in the Eastern Pacific, and 2 of them were in the Arabian Sea in the next 14 days. And that did not include this one. It's the craziest thing about that GFS model run from the other day. those 7 storms that it depicted did not include what we're looking at right now. So if the GFS is even a quarter right, we've got another 2 storms coming up somewhere around the world in the next 7 days. So that's something to watch. We seem to be having a supercharged start to the tropical seasons in the Northern Hemisphere. We had Rongfong earlier in the month in the Philippines around mid-May. We had Cyclone Amphan, which struck Bangladesh and West Bengal in India, very close to Kolkata just last week. And we had Tropical Storm Arthur. And to be honest with you, I'm so fogged up right now, I can't even remember what Arthur was. Tracked just off the North Carolina coast and moved out to sea. That's right. 60-mile-an-hour peak, that one was. The National Hurricane Center did actually briefly forecast 65 miles per hour for Arthur, but it never actually materialized. We were tempted to push that intensity up on our post-analysis. Didn't quite happen. But this is live, this is right now, this is real. Tropical Storm Bertha has formed in the Atlantic in the last 15 to 20 minutes. The National Hurricane Center confirming that a tropical storm warning does exist along the coast of South Carolina from Edisto Beach to South Santee River. The storm moving in towards land very quickly, as you can see on that imagery. There you just saw that satellite glimpse there, the overshooting tops. Very deep convection and lots of rainfall to go with it there. Flood warnings and watches in place. Looking at radar, I can tell you this is going to be a very quick developing event because the way it's moving already there, it's a northwesterly movement, north-northwest perhaps, and that looks like a landfall there just north of Charleston in about an hour or an hour and a half, somewhere between Charleston and Georgetown, probably around the mouth of the South Santee River is probably the best bet for a landfall right now. That's what I would suggest at this point. Very close to land, barely 25 miles, around 50 miles away from Charleston. So tropical storm force winds are possible. They extend out 25 miles from the center of Bertha. It's remarkable even to think that we are talking about Tropical Storm Bertha already. But this isn't a dream. We are waking up to our second Atlantic storm of the season. 45 miles per hour. Wind field 25 miles. That's northeast and southeast. So actually, according to the National Hurricane Center, they're not seeing yet any tropical storm force winds on the western side. So Charleston on the weaker side of this storm, but honestly, when we're talking about that, we usually refer to weaker sides in more intense systems. This is pretty weak. We're going to get gusty winds, wind speeds up to 40, gusting 50, maybe 55, 60 miles per hour gusts in some locations, especially exposed along the coast. Inland, probably much less. Most areas will probably not receive even tropical storm force winds. However, you're looking at that radar live. Rainfall rates, I'm not sure exactly what the rain rate is on there, but you can see a lot of yellows. I assume that is pretty substantial. I'll just get a readout on that in just a moment whilst we continue to watch together. This is the best thing about Force 13 coverage, is that when these situations develop completely out of the blue, not only are we there on top of it straight away, which we do as much as possible. We haven't always been able to achieve that because of other constraints, but we are getting much, much better at that, especially in 2020. You can see we're here, we're live right now. But it's all about you as well. What is the point in forecasting and broadcasting if it wasn't for a purpose, a service to help people? And we want to help anyone who is in the area right now understand the gravity of this situation and how to prepare for it. Obviously, very little lead time on this storm, but to actually Let's see if we can get from the National Hurricane Center. Regrettably, I cannot navigate to the forecast cone for you, but I can tell you it's a very simple one. The forecast cone takes it inland very soon through South Carolina, weakens into a depression very quickly, dies off somewhere in the western part of North Carolina. It's as simple as that. That's in the next 24 hours from now. Key messages from the National Hurricane Center. Number one is that Bertha is expected to produce heavy rainfall across portions of eastern and central South Carolina, west central to far southeastern North Carolina, and southwest Virginia. This rainfall may produce life-threatening flash flooding. Bertha is expected to bring tropical storm force winds to portions of the South Carolina coast within the warning area in the next few hours. A reminder of that warning area: Edisto Beach to the South Santee River in South Carolina. This is live, 8:37 a.m. on the US East Coast. Force 13 live with the latest on Tropical Storm Bertha, which is at 45 mile per hour winds, a pressure of 1009 millibars, and a landfall expected in about an hour's time. So this is where we're at right now at this moment. And let me just now try and see if we can get some rainfall totals. Try and get some 1 hour rainfall totals right now. We're looking at the moment of rain rates just around the Charleston area. We're talking about half an inch per hour at most near Charleston at the moment. Offshore, we're getting reads of around half an inch to a full inch of rain per hour in some of those red zones on the eastern side of the storm's center there. But inland at the moment, rain rates quarter inch, half inch an hour at most right now. The areas that will get the most rain as this storm swings in will be, as I say, around the mouth of the South Santee River, possibly up towards Georgetown. You could be looking later on rain rates today up to about 1 inch per hour at worst, unless things really materialize further. But that's the situation that we face ourselves in right now. The extent of the rainfall goes almost as far as Beaufort, whichever way you want to pronounce that one. I think it's Beaufort over here in British English, but it might be Beaufort over there. But that's about the extent of the rain coverage on the south side. On the north side, it's around Georgetown. And beyond there, you're getting just trace amounts at the moment, by the looks of things, on radar. Regrettably, again, I cannot show you any other imagery than what we've got here, because we've just literally impromptu set up live, because with such a quickly unfolding event, we wanted to bring this to you immediately. No fuss, no frills, no spicy graphics. Just what we see in front of us, Tropical Storm Bertha, which is about to make landfall. Okay, let's see now if we can take any questions for you. Questions that have come in. Start your message with Force 13, all in text. It will light up big and bright for me. There was a flood when I last mentioned it. So there was one about rainfall. Okay, I've mentioned that one just now. Any info about it strengthening to a Category 1? Well, no, the way it's moving, it's going to make landfall within about an hour. It can't strengthen any more than 45, maybe 50 miles per hour in that time. And more questions, will it intensify, and also can it become like Imelda? Well, we're not looking at an Imelda type of event. Imelda stalled over Texas for quite some time, delivered extraordinary amount of rainfall. This storm is not expected to stall. It's expected to move much more towards the north pretty quickly, and we're still, as I said there, rain rates, you could be looking at 1 inch an hour in some areas, and say if that happens for probably 6 hours, 7 hours in one or two localized spots. So you're talking 7-8 inches, or the worst case scenario is what I would imagine. Don't quote me on that one just yet as I try and get some more information, but I would say that would be a worst case scenario. Most areas will get less rain, much less rain than that. Do we think if sea temperatures keep increasing that the UK could start to see tropical storms reaching us in the next 5 years. Well, that is where I'm based. I've had to forego a wonderful day outside, which is extremely rare here, as people may know. Most of the stereotypes are true. Lovely day in the 70s here, sunshine. I was in the middle of enjoying that when Bertha formed, but obviously needs must, and we are here in the studio live covering that. To your question, not really. Not really. We've seen a few close calls like Ophelia in 2017, Grace in 2009, Vince in 2005. I might have missed one or two others. It's not likely that tropical impacts are going to affect the British Isles or Europe very often at all in the foreseeable future. You might get the odd one, and there is that rumour of that 1842 hurricane that hit Spain as well. They are very rare occurrences, but in weather you can't rule out anything. You really can't. So I hope that satisfactorily supplies the answer to your question. Could this intensify into a 50 or 55 mile per hour tropical storm at most right before landfall? My friend went to Myrtle Beach for a vacation and is getting greeted by this. Yeah, well, it could intensify a little bit more, 50 miles per hour maybe even 60 miles per hour at landfall if it really gets its act together. It is looking like it's tightening up a bit there. Hard to tell fully on that radar. As for Myrtle Beach, that is a little ways north of the storm itself. Myrtle Beach, yeah, there'll be some rainfall. They really won't get tropical storm force winds. They'll get breezes, they'll get wind, they'll get some gusty winds, but nothing significant. But you are looking there at some rainfall amounts. At the moment, Myrtle Beach only getting a trace at this point, despite what the radar's showing. What's the CDPS stage of this storm? We haven't had time to check. Honestly, haven't had a moment to check whether what this is on the CDPS scale. We've rushed this together as quick as we can. I don't know if all of our tags and descriptions on this live feed are all wrong. We just wanted to get live as soon as we could. But I can give you a ballpark figure if I just look it up real quick right now on the latest CDPS. So just to get that information for you, I imagine it's still going to be a stage 1. Yes, it's a stage 1 on the CDPS, scoring 8 points. The stage 2 threshold starts at 9.5 points. So this is a stage 1 on the CDPS scale. That's the Cyclone Destruction Potential Scale, invented by our own member Devon Williams back in 2016. That is a 10-tiered scale that factors in not just the storm's wind speed, but how large the wind field is and the rainfall potential, to give you a much more balanced idea of what to expect in any given tropical cyclone. So that is stage 1, which is minor. Obviously in the tropical storm warning zone, I guess the best advice is really don't do anything stupid. It's as simple as that. This storm will come and go very quickly. I think a lot of us are still shocked that it just formed in the first place. This has just happened in the last 30 minutes or so. The formation of Tropical Storm Bertha, the second storm now of the Atlantic hurricane season, only just a little more than a week after the first, Arthur. Does it paint a picture as to what we'll see the rest of this season? That's what we're going to have to study here at Force 13 HQ in the next few days ahead of our next hurricane season forecast, which is due out on the 31st on our hurricane season eve party, where we'll be talking about all those kinds of things and a lot more on that evening. If you want to book that in your diary, we will be live on Force 13 covering that from, I believe it's 5 p.m. Eastern Time till 9 p.m. on the 31st. We'll be doing all of that stuff and revealing our latest forecast, which obviously the numbers will be getting bumped up, maybe radically, considering that we've seen 2 storms by this point on May the 27th, before we've even actually got into the hurricane season, into their official bounds. And as I said near the top of the show here, the Force 13 April forecast called for 14 tropical storms in the Atlantic this year. That was on the assumption that we would get the second storm round about the 20th of July. So as you can see, well ahead of schedule. Let's repeat off the top the very latest information. If you've just joined us and are waking up to this a little bit confused and bleary-eyed I should say, a little bit like me actually, because I was working very late last night on the upcoming 2005 Atlantic Hurricane Season animation, which premieres on the 30th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Saturday. This is Tropical Storm Bertha, winds of 45 mile per hour winds, a pressure of 1009 millibars, live, about to make landfall. The National Hurricane Center only declared this at about 8:15. It's now just gone 8:45, as you can see on the bottom left hand corner of your screen there, our local time on the US East Coast. And we are expecting, the way it's going here, as I speak, landfall is getting more and more imminent. And we could be talking now in the next half hour by the looks of things there, the way it's moving. So it's a flash in the pan, spin up storm here that has just formed, that no one was really expecting. Certainly the National Hurricane Center weren't expecting it, because they said yesterday, even into the early hours of this morning, just a 30% chance. Then they upped it at the last minute. I thought it had a bit of a better chance, around a 50-50, honestly, because models were split on whether it would develop any closed isobars or not. Some of them did. Some of them did for an hour or two. Some of them didn't. So it was a close one. But this is Tropical Storm Bertha right now, 50 miles east-southeast of Charleston. A tropical storm warning has been declared. It's in effect for Edisto Beach to South Santee River. That will obviously be in effect until after landfall, and it is moving northwest at around 9 miles per hour. Tropical storm force winds extend outwards up to 25 miles on the eastern semicircle. So if you were to draw a semicircle from the center of this storm to the right hand side, it would extend out 25 miles, which in layman's terms would take it at landfall. It would take the tropical storm force winds around about as far as Georgetown would be just on the edge of tropical storm force winds at this rate. So it looks like it's going to make landfall right in between. And as a matter of fact, looking at that radar there in the latest images, it does look like it's a little bit further south, the center, towards Charleston. So it's just something that we just kind of have to eyeball a little bit. But obviously all of this area is going to get potential for tropical storm force winds. Take it seriously. Stay indoors. Prepare if necessary. But I mean, obviously, given the situation at hand right now globally, crazy times that we have here. Flooding will be the main issue, flash flooding, winds not so much. Could be talking about isolated amounts of 8 inches. At the moment we're seeing rain rates of about half an inch per hour in the Charleston area at most. Generally, in most areas looking about a quarter inch an hour or less. We've had a ton of questions. I don't think we'll be able to get through them all. It's just me here at the moment. Let's try and get some more though. Is it possible that this season will make it into the Greek alphabet? Well, steady on now. This is storm number 2. Greek alphabet starts at storm number, 22, 23, somewhere around there. Got a long way to go before we're looking at Greek letters. Long way to go. A full season ahead of us. The whole world can change in its atmospheric qualities by that point. We could have an extremely active start and a dead end. We could have an extremely active start, a dead middle, and an active end. We could have an active start, middle, and end, like 2005. We could have... This could be it. This could be it for the year. Highly doubtful. But, let's not talk about Greek letters. Any info on Bertha strengthening to Category 1? We had that already, I believe, but I just wanted to reiterate, this will not become a hurricane. There's no chance of that. I can pretty much guarantee that to you. Very difficult thing to do in weather forecasting, to guarantee you something. But looking at it right now, this is not going to become a hurricane at landfall. It's only 45 miles per hour right now. Hurricane status starts at 75 miles per hour sustained. It will probably might get 50, might get 60 at landfall, and then it will, I would imagine, weaken pretty quickly inland. Fairly small cyclone, not a huge amount of rain associated with it, but still significant near the landfall zone. Asta Zaliakate, I believe it is, says, can we continue the feed until landfall? Well, it looks like it. It's not got long. I mean, look at that. It's almost making landfall right now. Look. That's very interesting. It's really expeditiously moving towards land at this moment in time. I'm just trying to identify where exactly that is. Is that the area near... You see, this is where someone with good local geography would be nice, because I have never visited the Carolinas, unfortunately, although I do hope to this year. But it looks to me like it's just northeast of Mount Pleasant, and we'll be moving inland somewhere near there, just to the northeast around Bulls Bay, by the looks of things there on that radar imagery. And at the rate this thing is going, it's going to be a matter of, I mean, we're watching this radar live, it's updating all the time. The last frame on this was at 1:45 at 46 minutes past, so 8 minutes old, and very close to landfall. And that's not even an hour after it was first declared a tropical storm. So they've really, it's almost a no-win situation really for the authorities on this. It's popped up out of nowhere. People were going to bed last night looking at a 30% chance that didn't look like it was going to get much traction. And all of a sudden you're waking up this morning, and I think people still tuning in who are just getting the news, Tropical Storm Bertha has formed in the Atlantic Ocean just off the coast of South Carolina. At the start of this production, which we started at about 1:15, about 20 past probably, this was 50 miles east-southeast of Charleston, just eyeballing that latest radar. It's moving pretty quickly. I would say now it's probably about 25 miles east-northeast of Charleston at this very moment, and about to make landfall near Bulls Bay, for those who are familiar with the area. See if we can get some more questions. Can Bertha intensify? Will it be like Imelda? We had that type of question before. I think I covered that. What are the National Hurricane Center predicting for this year's hurricane season? How does that compare to our predictions? They are predictably very cautious. They've got a wide area. I can't remember the concrete numbers. I think it was something like between 12 and 18 they were calling for. The NOAA, which issue the predictions, something like that. I can't quite remember what it was now. We fit in their scope with our early April prediction at the lower end, but it's quite clear, I think, that those numbers are going to be bumped up, considering that these two storms have formed pretty much not foreseen by our forecasting, which we're not too disappointed by, because they're not particularly intense storms. What we did manage to nail on our forecast in April was the Bay of Bengal storm, which we did say would happen in the next 2 months, something like that. So we were pretty pleased with that, not to blow our own trumpet, but we do have faith in our predictions. We don't do them for fun. We do them because we feel as though we've got enough science, enough history, enough algorithm, enough modeling to know to an extent what to expect in the coming year. Not, unfortunately, and you see it all the time in 5-day forecasts, that the storms can deviate even from 5-day forecast cones by quite a bit. We're obviously nowhere near being able to pinpoint when a storm's going to hit where, at what time of year, what day, what week, what month. But we can give our best indications based on information that we already have. And that's how artificial intelligence works. And as we get more and more data through the years of hurricane tracking, forecasting will continue to get better and better, not just short term, but long term as well. Can the brown ocean effect happen with this storm is another question that we get here. Been looking at the geography of the area. It does look like a lot of wetland area along the coast there, so it might buy the storm an extra hour or two after it moves, after its official landfall, of maybe a little bit more intensification. But still, I can't see this getting past 60 miles per hour. At the moment it is still only 45, but it may get, I think it might get to 50. We'll see. But that's the latest from the National Hurricane Center, 45 miles per hour and a pressure of 1009 millibars. It's almost 9 a.m. on the East Coast. This May 27th, what was a very relaxing, chilled day here at Force 13 HQ has turned into a big breaking news story that the second Atlantic storm of the year has formed, and that is in front of your eyes right now, Tropical Storm Bertha. This was a very impromptu live stream. We'll be running until landfall. It's coming up very shortly. We may as well. We'll go off the air probably about half past the hour, and just continue to watch what in meteorological terms is not a huge event, but in terms of how unexpected it was at short notice, is meteorologically speaking quite fascinating. To reiterate the hazards, again, eastern semicircle of this storm, that's the right hand side, you're talking up to 25 miles of tropical storm force winds. That will extend therefore almost as far as Georgetown. I get mixed up with those two sometimes. And North Santee and McLennanville and Arundel all probably will get tropical storm force winds. I did say earlier it looks like a landfall near the mouth of the South Santee River. No, it's going to be further south than that. The tropical storm warning from Edisto Beach to the South Santee River. Landfall looks like it will be in Bulls Bay, near just south of Arundel, into Francis Marion National Forest. So that is what we're looking at right now. That would be a landfall about 25 miles northeast of Charleston, about 16 or 17 miles northeast of Mount Pleasant, and this is occurring imminently. Checking the radar again as we tick over into the 9 o'clock hour. Accumulated rainfall in the last hour. Again, we are looking, let's see if I can refresh that actually. Yep, getting some new data here. Just the odd area really that's getting half an inch of rain an hour. Some areas along the coast. Let me just find out where exactly here. Still familiarizing myself with the local geography. But oh, lost my threads now. But on the radar again, where is that? Somewhere around Kiowa Island is getting a little bit heavier rain than surrounding areas at the minute, up to maybe half an inch per hour. Along the what is it? The I-26 corridor up towards the northwest there. You're looking at one or two patches of significant rainfall just northwest of Charleston on the way in there. That's around up to half an inch of rain per hour. There are some special marine warnings off the coast. That's for the darker areas on the right-hand side, the eastern side of the storm. They're trailing off from the center there. You can see becoming more detached in the last few frames by the looks of things on radar. Special marine warnings out for that. Could see some significant rain rates in that. Right now, not so much just yet, but rainfall is increasing up to Georgetown. They're now starting to get 0.1 per hour rain rate, and that will very soon creep up to 0.25 and then maybe 0.5. Once you know, that area in particular may end up getting that trailing leg of this storm as it trails over Georgetown, and that area could see maybe a few sustained hours of half an inch per hour, so you could see maybe 4 or 5 inches at a worst case scenario. We'll keep watching this very, very closely, but obviously the main threat on this really is the flooding. To reiterate some of those flood warnings that I read out earlier, and just want to see if there's any updates on that, whether any flash flood warnings might have been issued or anything like that. I would imagine not, but let me just double check that one. Actually, no, that's just for the tropical storm warning. So no, there's no flash flood warnings, but there are flash flood watches in effect now for quite a wide area. I'll get onto that in just a moment. First of all, the flood warnings, particularly the Santee River near Jamestown. At 8 p.m. Tuesday, the stage was 15.1 feet. Flood stage is at 10 feet. Minor flooding is occurring and moderate flooding is forecast. The river will continue to rise to near 17.2 feet by Friday evening. Additional rises may be possible thereafter. At 17.0, the lower half mile of Harris Landing Road will be flooded and impassable, and the residents at the end of the road would be flooded. So that is the current situation there. Flood warning continues for Wateree River at Lake Wateree, affecting Fairfield, Kershaw and Lancaster counties, and for Congaree River at Carolina Eastman, affecting Calhoun, Lexington and Richland counties, and at Congaree National Park, Gadsden as well. This is Force 13 Live, continuing coverage of Tropical Storm Bertha, which is hot off the press in the last hour. It has formed the second storm of this Atlantic hurricane season, which looks like it's already going to live up to its expectations of becoming an active one yet again. A trail of active hurricane seasons that we've had now since 2015, 2016 onwards, would make this the 5th year in a row that would have substantial activity if this rate continues. Bearing in mind that at this point we forecasted only a 20% chance that there would be one storm before the end of May, and now we've got 2. So that's why our forecast is going to change a lot when we update those numbers on May 31st. I'm going to try and get more questions. I am so far behind, so do forgive me on this. Someone says a hurricane is about to form towards the Mexico Gulf. I'm not sure about that. If you're talking about the East Pacific, maybe. There is a storm brewing. Could become a hurricane, but it's been trending down a little bit recently. And I'm just looking elsewhere. Not too much else. So if you do have any questions for us live right now, you can start your message with Force 13 all in text. We're going to run for probably another half hour here as this storm makes landfall. It looks like that's about to happen right now. This is live imagery, radar, pretty much live, near live. The last image here is 56 minutes past, so that last image there is 10 minutes old. So we're pretty much up to date. And you can see that little depression there of green around that yellow circular area near the land there. That shows you the center, where we think the center of the storm is right now. Looks like a fair estimate based on radar, and I'm still trying to get a definitive fix on that, which I'm struggling with a little bit at the moment. I will try and get a read on that. Okay, looks like... Okay, no, that's not the right thing. We will get something for you very shortly. But there's not too much else for me to say here. We just continue to watch this storm moving close towards land. So Dead Reckoning again. I would have liked to have seen the radar on another display so I could have told you the distances in more clear-cut circumstances. But it looks to me as though the center of this storm is just a few miles now, probably about 5 miles off the coast, and I'm not sure if that area has a name. Bulls Island, I believe. Looks like it's just off there right now. And still those blowing tops, not the best. As a matter of fact, if we were to just go and how do we do this again? If we go and take that radar off just for a moment, you can just see again that imagery. You wouldn't think that the center of the storm was on the left hand side of that convection there. Maybe an untrained eye. The convection looking a little bit more messy, I suppose. The radar appearance still looking rather decent, although there is a significant gap there, and I think you could see that on satellite just then as well, creeping in on the right hand side. So I must say, this is really nowcasting now, but I'm not ashamed of it. It looks like to me that maybe any chance of further strengthening is now over, looking at that dry slot that looks to be filling in on the eastern side. So it looks like 45 mile an hour, maybe 50 is going to be our landfall intensity. As soon as the National Hurricane Center think it's made landfall, they will probably put out an update. Just want to press this button and see what we get. Oh, there's some numbers of wind gusts right now. Well, that's helpful. So you can see those are the wind gusts that have been happening in the area. You can see it definitely on the eastern side, the wind gusts are higher. Georgetown there, 27 on that last image. I'm not sure whether that's in miles per hour or whether it's in knots. If it's miles per hour, it's obviously 27. If it's in knots, that's more around 31. But certainly the stronger winds are on the eastern side. Charleston there at 16, which is actually a little bit lower than what it was a little earlier on. But again, we'll be here probably for another 20 minutes before we wrap up this one, as we continue to monitor this storm live as it makes landfall. Just another little piece of history in our lives. It looks like on that last frame there, maybe a little bit further south, and it looks to me, I must say, every frame that goes by, this landfall looks like it's just about to happen, or maybe is happening right now as we speak at 9:10 this morning on the East Coast. I'm checking the National Hurricane Center periodically to see if they do put out an update, a landfall update, or whether they don't put out a landfall update and they just do an update at the normal time. I don't know. They say they're going to do a complete advisory at 11 a.m, which is what you would expect under normal circumstances. But they usually produce a landfall update when they think it has. And I must say it's very close right now, looking on that right-hand side. And it does start to look a little bit more flaky as it's doing so. But again, rain rates in there, you could be talking about 1/2 inch per hour. And again, you're watching that trailing band on the eastern side. That's probably going to be the worst part of this storm. Especially if it finds a sweet spot where the line will just go over and over one place for a few hours. And that is where the real flash flooding concerns would be. And at the moment, it's looking like the Georgetown area. So again, if you've just joined us, this is live. This is Force 13 coverage on Tropical Storm Bertha, which the National Hurricane Center named nearly an hour ago. And almost as soon as that has happened, it's just about to make landfall. Let's see if we can get some other overlays on this, because we're working with this new stuff as well. Let's see. What else do we have on here? Well, there's some weather symbols, if you understand them. I'm not sure I do. Let's see, what else? Anything interesting on here? Doesn't look like it. Got temperature layers there. And this is actually interesting. This is much more helpful. These are watches and warnings that are currently in effect on this overlay now. So if you can make out the greens and the yellows there, the hatchings, those are all flood-related warnings. Although there's some overlap because yellow also means tropical storm watch. Oh, yellow with no hatching is a tropical storm watch. Okay, I'm learning this as we go along. So if you see yellow with no hatching, it's a tropical storm warning, which should be there anyway. You know they are. The tropical storm... Sorry, I'm not even talking about a watch. I'm talking about a warning. That'll be a full yellow near the landfall zone. But anyway, just to show the extent of those flooding areas is the main idea of this. So you've got the flood watch extending way up into North Carolina, and I can tell you off the map, off the screen. In fact, could we pitch that screen a little bit further? We'll be able to show you that that map actually extends further north, and you can see there it also extends into Virginia as well. That's flash flood watches, I believe, all the way up into Virginia now, and then panning down further south again here. And then the hatched green areas, again, that's the flood warnings that are in effect right now. Before I get any more confused by that, we'll turn it off and we'll go back to those wind gusts. So those numbers again depicting latest wind gusts. I still don't know the metric. I assume for now that it's miles per hour. So you're talking 27 there in Georgetown right now on that latest observation, and generally around and about you're looking at high teens up to about 20 miles per hour in some places, especially along the coast. Charleston about 16 there in the latest imagery. Latest rain rates in the Charleston area in particular, you're looking at about 0.2 inches of rain per hour, so light rain there at the minute by the looks of things on radar. Main focus point rainfall wise is that band on the right hand side there that's sweeping round and will go and might unleash itself there in the Georgetown area and possibly up towards Myrtle Beach later on today. Latest frames of this storm are showing that landfall is occurring, or appears to be occurring, on Bulls Island, which is 14 miles northeast of Mount Pleasant, 22 miles northeast of Charleston, and 37 miles southwest of Georgetown. And hard to tell, but if that is indeed a jog to the west, which it looks like it could be, this thing could still track right over North Charleston. So that's very interesting to note, but you probably wouldn't notice much of a difference, quite honestly. It is a very weak storm, 45-mile-an-hour winds. That's mainly on the eastern side, so unless the center passes you, if you're on the west of this storm right now, if the center passes you, moves west, and therefore you become on the east, that's when the winds will go up. So it's just eastern sides that will get the highest winds. At the moment, National Hurricane Center don't think there'll be any tropical storm force winds at all on the western side. And again, rainfall, the primary message. We won't be here much longer. Let's get some more questions. Imminent landfall. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. We've had a few so far. And I'm just going to start at a random place in the comments. So if I have missed you, please try again. Could Bertha re-strengthen? I'm not seeing it. Honestly, I'm not seeing it. Take an intensity guess right now. It appears it's rapidly organizing still. I don't agree. I don't think it looks better than it did before. It might be 50 miles an hour. It might. But I think, it's somewhere around what it was when it was first designated an hour ago. Is the active period going to continue into June and July? Would help in getting a hyperactive season. Well, it would, wouldn't it? I'm going to have to redo all of that research into what our preseason predictions are going to look like. But usually you would expect maybe one storm in June. But then again, we expected 0.2 storms in May. That might sound a bit weird, but essentially a 20% chance of a storm in May. And lo and behold, we've had 2. So that's completely thrown that projection out the window there. What will the impacts be in Charlotte? Now, that is some way out of the way yet, but fair point. The center of this storm could track over Charlotte. It would be much weakened by then. It would be a depression. It will probably be moving faster. So rain rates rain rates would still be quite high, but rain totals would be lower. So you could still be looking at some flash flooding, but I wouldn't say it's a massive possibility right now, although I'm not sure of the circumstances of the area. So this is where local knowledge really helps, and obviously I'm 3,000 miles away and don't have any. So if please tell me if this area right now is a saturated area that's already had a lot of rain recently and is prone to flooding. That would change the tone, wouldn't it? If you don't want any extra rain. Let's see. But no tropical storm impacts there, certainly. How would evacuations work now? That's a really good question. Probably not a question to direct to me, but to direct to authorities. If you're still in an area where COVID is lurking and is still having a massive impact on movement, which in most places it still is, then my best advice to you really is obviously listen to officials, but if you feel that your life is in danger, if you feel that it's an emergency, that your life is in danger, that you need to get out, then throw COVID out of the window. It's not... The chances of getting coronavirus is much smaller than the chances of you, being injured or worse in a storm situation if you're right under it, if you're in it, Same if you're in a tornado warning. Same thing if you're in a vulnerable location to flooding and your house is getting flooded. Get out. Doesn't matter. Just get out. Let's see what else we've got. What do we think of the storm that might cross over into the Atlantic from the East Pacific? Well, I made a little joke about this yesterday. There's a storm that's being forecast by the GFS model yesterday that was going to make landfall possibly even in El Salvador. and maybe even as a hurricane. That's still on the cards, by the way. High chance of formation in the next 5 days. I think it's 10% next 2 days, 70% next 5 days from the National Hurricane Center. And it would make landfall in Central America, and one or two forecast models were predicting that it would survive in some form into the Atlantic, into the Caribbean. Whether it would be designated as the same storm or a different storm, we don't know, and then become enormous as it entered the Gulf of Mexico, pretty much covering the whole Gulf before making landfall somewhere along the Gulf Coast. Very weak, but extraordinarily large. That was long range. I don't think that's going to happen. That's for now. We'll see about that next week. Is that a small eye just off the coast? Well, this is radar, so storms always have a center of circulation, so it can, even in the weakest storms, if it's got a center of circulation, radar will depict it looking like an eye. It is not an eye because there is not an eye wall. There is no mass build-up in clouds around the center of this eye. It is not an eye in all intents and purposes. It's just the center of the storm, but it does look like an eye on radar. That is a meteorological definition of an eye, not true. Do we think this season is favoring to develop even slightly favorable systems too? I'm not sure what you're saying in that question. I'm sorry. Please try again. Definitely looking better than Arthur is one comment that we've received there. Perhaps. Let's see. How many Category 5s will form this year? That's a pie in the sky question. You could say anything. You really could. I don't want to tell you anything like that today. It would just be a guess. It would be irresponsible. Let's see what else we've got. Why did Barry look bad? Why did Barry look bad? Barry looked atrocious. I don't know what it was now. What was it? Was it wind shear? Was it dry air? Maybe a bit of both. Can't quite remember now. But it did. It looked atrocious. But a hurricane is a hurricane. It had a center of circulation, and it had a hurricane force, and it had hurricane force winds. It's a hurricane. Eye is not required. Convection on all sides is not required. It could be heavily sheared with a partially exposed circulation, but if it's got a circulation and it's got 75-mile-an-hour winds, it's a hurricane. And that's what Barry was last year. Similarly, with Umberto, absolutely tearing hair out with Umberto, because recon planes got 125-mile-an-hour storm in 125-mile-an-hour winds in a storm that had an exposed center of circulation. You couldn't make that up. It does go to show as well, could we possibly have underestimated a lot of those older storms that we didn't have recon for way out at sea? Anyway, I'm going on a little bit there on a bit of a tangent as we watch this landfall occur. It looks to me at this moment in time, this storm has now made landfall, okay? So this is breaking news. We don't have any special graphics for it. We're not a staff of 100 multi-million-dollar news agency. We can just tell you in plain English that this storm has made landfall now, looking at it, on what appears to be the western side of Bulls Island in South Carolina. So that's around 15 miles northeast of Mount Pleasant. In fact, maybe a little less than that, around 11 miles now northeast of Mount Pleasant. And that would put it maybe something like 17, 18, if I'm not mistaken. 18 miles northeast of Charleston. So we are now calling this a landfall at this point of Tropical Storm Bertha with 45-mile-an-hour winds and a pressure of 1,009 millibars, which is what the National Hurricane Center started with at their last advisory. They haven't issued an update, but if they do, in the next few minutes, we'll let you know. We will go off air shortly, because usually, and we're just completely unprepared. This has been impromptu. It's just me here. I've been here for an hour and 9 minutes to give you this breaking story. that Bertha is about to make landfall, and now it has, and it's been named, and I think a lot of us have now gotten over that shock. So let's see if we can take some quick fire questions then before we finish up this stream. Everyone wants to know, when will the tropical weather bulletins start? I would have loved to have started them on May the 15th, which was the plan, but it didn't happen because we had 3 cyclones active that we had to cover: Arthur, Ronfong, and Umpan. That delayed us by 9 days. So the next target was May 26th, but then we had to have a really hard slog getting the 2005 animation finished for May 30th, which we had scheduled and booked in for months in advance, so we needed to get that done. So now we still want to reformat the tropical weather bulletin as well. For those who don't know, the tropical weather bulletins, when they do start, they are daily updates, usually issued at 8 p.m. 8 p.m. Eastern Time every evening on the east coast of the US, for instance, but covers the whole world in what's going on in the world of tropics every day throughout the whole hurricane season, May 15th to November 30th. We hope to do this year. We hope to do it every day, or nearly every day, as much as we can, as much as necessary. And fan favorite, I believe. It does tell you a lot of informative stuff. It takes a good look at everywhere around the world. They will come as soon as we can get them on. I'm still guaranteeing to you that we will have them by June 1st, but we're hoping maybe a day or two sooner. It would have been really good if we had one last night, for instance, to talk about this, for goodness sake. But, oh well, you got to do with what we've got, and that is where we're at right now. But our coverage does continue to get better, and you can support us through many means if you think we're doing a good job. You can become a member, an official member of the Force 13 Ultimate Fan Program, which you can find under our community suggestions or wherever it is on our channel and whatnot. You get some extra benefits with that as well. But just your support in being here and watching our coverage is really our lifeblood, and the more you get the word out, if you like our coverage, please share it. Please show people how good a job that you think we're doing. If we are, if not, fine, that's your opinion. And sometimes we do have slip-ups, but hey. But, you know, the more, and if you feel like you can get involved, if you have abilities that you think could help us deliver even better coverage, we are always recruiting. We're going to be starting a big recruitment drive in particular this June, but we are always looking. So if you want to get in touch for any reason at all, start your message, well, that's for right now, but if more formally, you can contact us on Facebook and Twitter, search Force 13 all in text, and you can send a direct email to contact@force13.com. So that's contact@force-13.com. That's the email address that you can send. That goes straight through here to my desk, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. So to reiterate, as we're about to end our coverage here, Tropical Storm Bertha was declared by the National Hurricane Center at about 8:15 this morning on the US East Coast. And looking at this, at about 9:25, it would appear to have made landfall on the western side of Bulls Island, around 11 miles northeast of Mount Pleasant, and 18 miles northeast of Charleston. Winds are stronger on the eastern side than on the western side. A tropical storm warning is in effect for Edisto Beach to South Santee River, expected to produce heavy rainfall across portions of eastern and central South Carolina, west central to far southeastern North Carolina, and even into southwest Virginia. This rainfall may produce, pardon me, I knew it was coming, may produce life-threatening flash flooding. Bertha is expected to bring tropical storm winds to portions of the South Carolina coast within the warning area in the next few hours. That concludes our live stream. Thanks very much for tuning in. This is another Landfall event brought to you by Force 13 Live. Tropical Storm Bertha has made landfall. Stay safe in that area in the South Carolina coastal region. Charleston to Georgetown in particular, you're looking at a rainy day and potentially some strong tropical storm force winds. Have a good one. Stay safe. And we'll be back again with more updates across all of our social media platforms. It's been great to have you with us. This is me, Nathan Foy, running Force 13 and signing out for now. Thanks.